Go, all right. Jude says go. We got to go. We're talking about, not Jude, but we're talking about Ruth today. So we're continuing from last week. Ruth is a story about faithfulness. But now, last week we were at the beginning of Ruth, and now we're going to be at the end of Ruth. So I'm going to tell you what happened in between. As you recall, things were tough on Naomi. Naomi had lost her husband and her 2 sons. And it left 3 women widows. And this was a destitute case in ancient times. Now Naomi was Ruth's mother-in-law. And she decides to return to the land of Judah, her own people. But knowing that her daughters-in-law would do better if they stayed in their own country with their own kin, presses them to leave her. Orpah reluctantly agrees, but Ruth is more stubborn, exhibiting a faithfulness akin to the faithfulness of God. Ruth says, "Don't force me to leave you. Don't make me go home. Where you go, I go. And where you live, I'll live. Your people are my people. Your God is my God. Where you die, I'll die. And that's where I'll be buried. So help me, God, not even death itself is going to come between us." When Naomi and Ruth reach Bethlehem, the whole town stirs with a buzz of activity as the folks wonder about all that has befallen Naomi. Naomi shares a bitter story of woe, how she left full and has come back now empty, and how the Lord has dealt harshly with her. She even asks people to call her by a new name, Mara, which literally means bitter. Naomi soon learns of a prominent kinsman on her husband's side named Boaz, who's doing quite well. Ruth decides to go to the field to glean behind the reapers. In many ways, this was an ancient method of welfare. The poor were allowed to go through the fields after the main harvest and glean whatever was left. But Ruth is also looking for a benefactor, someone who might take an interest in her. It just so happens that Ruth finds herself in the fields of Boaz. When Boaz sees this young woman, he asks about her. He learns that she's the Moabite woman who came with Naomi that everybody's been talking about. Not only is Boaz impressed by how hard she works, but he also seems to be a bit smitten with her. He tells her not to go to any other field, but to stay close to the other women. He tells the young men to leave her alone, a protective gesture in dangerous times. And he orders his reapers to purposely leave grain for her to glean. Ruth asks why she has earned his favor. Boaz relates that he's heard her story and wishes her good fortune. I want to be clear, Boaz would be an excellent catch of a husband. Would give Ruth and Naomi all the security they would need and more. And this brings us to the scene of Boaz and Ruth at the threshing floor. My friends, in a way only the Bible can offer, this scene is really quite racy, and it has obvious sexual innuendo in the story, all told in tradition and accepted social norms of ancient Israel. Did Ruth seduce Boaz? Most likely. But again, the way the story is told, Boaz is seen as acting with honor, and were perhaps tricked into doing something with Ruth. And like any scandalous story, Ruth is sure to leave early in the morning. Let anyone find out Boaz spent the night with a woman at the threshing floor. It turns out that Boaz is not the closest kin to Naomi, and so Boaz wastes no time in seeking out the next in line to make things right, acquiring the land of Naomi's late husband and taking Ruth as his wife. And that's where we'll pick up the story.
Here's Ruth, chapter 4, verses 7 through 17, the Message. In the olden times of Israel, this is how they handled official business regarding matters of property and inheritance. A man would take off his shoe and give it to the other person. This was the same as an official seal or personal signature of Israel. So when Boaz, Redeemer, relative, said, "Go ahead and buy it," he signed the deal by pulling off his shoe. Boaz then addressed the elders and all the people in the town responsibility for Ruth, the foreigner, the widow of Laban. I'll take her as my wife and keep the name of the deceased alive, along with his inheritance. The memory and reputation of all deceased is not going to disappear out of this family or from his hometown. To all this you are witnesses this very day. All the people in the town square that day, backing up the elders, said, "Yes, we are witnesses. May God make this woman who is coming into your household like Rachel and Leah, two women who built the family of Israel. May God make you a pillar in Ephrathah and famous in Bethlehem. With the children God gives you from this young woman, may your family rival the family of Perez, the son of Tamar, or to Judah." Boaz married Ruth. She became his wife. Boaz slept with her. By God's gracious gift, she conceived and had a son. The town women said to Naomi, "Blessed be God. He didn't leave you without family to carry on your life. May this baby grow up to be famous in Israel. He'll make you young again. He'll take care of you in old age. And this daughter-in-law who has brought him into the world and loves you so much, why, she's worth more to you than 7 sons." Naomi took the baby and held him in her arms, cuddling him, cooing over him, waiting on him hand and foot. The neighborhood women started calling him Naomi's baby boy, but his real name was Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David. This is the word of God.
God is still speaking. Thanks be to God.
A wondrous God of steadfast love and faithfulness, send your Spirit upon us. Let us know your will this day and guide us in understanding the word. Bless the speaking, the hearing, and the living of your holy word. Amen. It's sometimes difficult to understand the ways of our God, for we're unsure of the nature of God's providence, and sometimes just out of the blue, God surprises us with grace, grants us the power, and shows us His Spirit. God's blessings come out both in mundane and spectacular ways, and we are left wondering about a God who loves us dearly, who's involved in our lives, guiding and directing and loving us, but at the same time aware of our own role as what we are asked to play. Because God uses us in ways that we may not even realize and lets us share in God's will. Picking up from the story last week, we're aware of Ruth's faithfulness and her willingness to stand by her mother-in-law no matter what the cost. And with great loyalty and love, Ruth chooses the harder road, traveling with Naomi back to her land and people. And even though it may seem like the hand of God had turned against them, taking all 3 men from the family, leaving them without security, still they seek refuge in the land of Judah. The passage we have today picks up the story at the end. As I said last week, Boaz takes an interest in Ruth and Naomi. A distant kin to Naomi, he makes sure Ruth is looked out for as she tries to gather food in the fields, gleaning whatever she can from the fields after the reapers come through. When Ruth asks him about his generosity and compassion, Boaz states that he has heard of her story and predicament, of how she had voluntarily remained with Naomi. Boaz appreciates Ruth's faithfulness. In time, Boaz decides to seek Ruth's hand in marriage, and after some land turns up in Naomi's name, Boaz has to get authorization for acquiring the land, and Ruth is her wife. A closer kin surfaces, and by Jewish right, he's entitled to marry Ruth and acquire the land. Even so, the man yields to Boaz and lets Boaz seek Ruth's hand in marriage. Alas, things have worked out for the best. Ruth is assured a husband and soon conceives, and Naomi has found a family again so that she will be cared for. The disaster is past, and there is hope. Now, the story itself demonstrates the faithfulness of both Ruth and Boaz, and through them we learn what God intends for all of us. In a way, it shows the so at the very end, we see God's ultimate providence within this innocent story of love and faithfulness. Ruth's child, Obed, is not just any person in Judah. He is destined to be the grandfather of King David, the most celebrated king in all of Israel's history. And so King David's great-grandmother was Ruth, a Gentile, an immigrant, someone from the outside. Through the faith of this poor, foreign woman, God was at work, guiding and protecting and engineering things so that David could ultimately be born. It not only shows God's faithfulness, but it also demonstrates how we too sometimes take part in God's providence. It was Ruth's own faithfulness and loyalty that provided the vehicle for God's work. Even though Ruth was probably unsure of exactly what she needed to do, simply by sticking to what she knew was close at hand, that she needed to care for her mother-in-law and return with her. Ruth was active in God's plan. There's much wisdom here for all of us, because this is what faith is like. Oftentimes, we don't see the big picture. We only see our own lives. And even then, it's hard to put that into perspective of our faith. But what we learn from this story is that God uses real people. Sometimes surrounded in this mess called life, with all of our stress and obligations and struggles, our ups and our downs, God uses us to do God's work. And through our faithful commitment to our God, our Lord spreads her love and grace, enabling us to be vessels of God's care. Now, I've always been fond of the movie Forrest Gump. So I'm getting older. I used to always refer to Forrest Gump. There might be people who haven't even seen that movie now. So who's seen Forrest Gump? Now, come on. All right, good. Forrest Gump. If you haven't seen it, you should. It's a story of this simple guy. He's not the brightest in the world, but he goes through life all the same, just like the rest of it. And the way the story is told, Forrest touches throughout our American history. Reminds us what we have struggled with as a nation and as a people. But the story, in a lot of ways, is much more deeper than that. Because when I look at it, this simple man seems to understand life far better than most of us ever will. Now, there's two themes that run throughout this movie, if you remember. First of all, you have Mom, right? Who says life is what? Like a box of chocolates, right? You never know what you're going to get. You never know what you're going to get. Things happen to you that you have no control over. I mean, you have choices, sure. But sometimes those choices don't yield very good results. And we're all forced to live with the consequences. Life is a box of chocolates. Now, competing with this, understand, is Lieutenant Dan. Remember old Lieutenant Dan? He has a perspective that all of us have a kind of destiny to fulfill. Written in the stars, if you will. Remember all those soldiers, all back through his history, they had all died in combat. He expected that was going to be his destiny. We all have a purpose. We all have a path to follow, a destiny. And there's this kind of power that is guiding us in these choices and on these paths, almost even beyond our own power and influence. Now, at the very end of the story, if you recall, Forrest is kneeling at the grave of Jenny, the woman that he loved. He's talking to her grave like he's talking to her, sharing his deepest thoughts and his feelings. And he's looking back in his own life that we have watched over 2 hours. And he expresses that he he says, are we all just floating in the wind like a leaf, never knowing what life will bring our way? Or if Lieutenant Dan is right, and somehow we all have this destiny to fulfill. But what he says at the end is he says, somehow I think both are right. That they are both happening at the same time. God's power is a mystery, my friends. There is an element of the divine that is always a mystery to us, and that is a good thing. That somehow, yes, both those two things can be right and happening at exactly the same time. I think the story of Ruth makes that point. Ruth did what she was supposed to do in faith, acting out of loyalty and commitment. And yet God was behind the scenes, moving things in her life, and even looking forward, ahead to King David. And it makes us think too that perhaps the things that we interact with, maybe they will be used by God for lasting generations. I mean, last week we brought up Christy Bernard and the impact that we had on her life and the life of those gathered around her. That we planted seeds, perhaps even in her mother and the people that cared for her. What are the lasting changes that we were part of because we did what we are called to do by God, of showing love and welcoming somebody and meeting someone where they're at. God's power will always remain a mystery. At times, we only catch glimpses. At other times, we are amazed by the power of miracles. And sometimes we wonder what this life is really all about. Where this God is who we pray to. Or why things turn out the way they do. But the truth, my friends, is although we may not be aware of it, God is always at work in our lives. Is always doing great and wonderful things. Sometimes we don't even know it. But our God asks us to trust God's grace. To know deep down that God is there for us, helping us and guiding us and sustaining us with grace. And through our own faithfulness, God allows us to be part of the miracle of God's love. Let the surprises of faithfulness spill into your heart. Let God's love for us motivate us and sustain us. And let the hope of Jesus Christ bring us the peace that goes beyond understanding. Thanks be to God. Amen.